Welcome back, everyone, to our weekly webinar series, Embracing Change. We have a firecracker today, Kate Bright from London, who's honored us to be here to talk about security. Welcome, Kate. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And
thank you for having me.
So, Kate, security. When we talk about reactive, proactive, I mean, let's go really, really back to the basics, right? Where people are still coming on, seeing the numbers are not there yet. So just let's go back to the basics and really understand, what does security entail, right? And what does it mean? And then I guess it means, I'm sure, different things to different people. So kind of just walk us through what is that even? What is that?
So really interestingly, I'm on a journey myself of learning about security through the ages and the historical approach to when we actually started to need security, when we were land-based individuals with land to protect, to prevent other tribes and individuals from taking our land. And a really interesting fact that the word security is derived from a word that was only actually invented a few centuries ago. So I think we need to contextualize this whole idea that then government-led security and policing and how law has evolved over the years is such an interesting, for me, interesting area of the feeling of security, and then this service or this sort of disempowerment of being given security too. So that for me has always been a real backdrop. And I think growing up in a family of very sort of masculine influences, lots of brothers, I always felt protected. So I think for me, this idea of security starts from, and I'll bore you with Maslow's hierarchy later in relation to why it's so important for me and my clients. But this whole idea of where your emotional support starts in your life defines then the idea of the peace of mind. So sorry to go so deep so early, but I think
that's great.
For a lot of people, I love myth busting, stereotype bashing, because I think it's a word that is so evocative, but yet has such a very personal connotation. And certainly you say security, you start to think of all sorts of different looks and feels. So yeah, it's as much a feeling and a sort of state of mind as it is then a solution-based industry that then gives you that feeling or assesses your risk and gives you a solution off the back of it.
So maybe we take it a different angle. We say, okay, how do you start this process? Like, how does it begin? Maybe we go with that, right? That what does safety mean to them? But again, like, we run the business we run, and there's what you want and what you need, right? There's a lot of blind spots. There's a lot of key insights that come through an assessment or a conversation. So I don't know, you want to walk us through the process? Like, what do you feel like? How do you feel like? I mean, I don't want to lead it. I want you to lead it.
No, sure. Well, I can give you probably the best way to answer that is how we meet clients and where we have sat alongside the private security industry. And working with private clients, I think we're normally meeting people when you say the word security during things like trigger events. So we're already in a reactive state. We're already on the frontal lobe. We're already thinking in sort of staccato and high tempo. So for us, it's actually to be able to be that pragmatic step back and actually be that calm in the storm, and particularly where we're running through things like what we call a secure lifestyle audit, not using terminology that's going to be, it's jargon free for starters, but that's going to actually look at solutions rather than looking backwards, looking forwards to a solution based approach. So risk profiling in the wake of a pandemic has also been very, very interesting for us. The feeling of secure lifestyle, which is the format that we use for defining someone's parameters. One person's, as we've just said, safety is another person's, totally unacceptable way of living. And so by breaking it down into the various aspects of people's lives, so considerations for children, physical location, home environment, appetite for digital safety, and one man's cyber is another man's really good IT setup at home. So for us, it's about bringing that conversation down to the sort of building blocks of what that person's life entails, making it relevant, making it accessible to that person's life. I think is the starting point that we come at from any assessment of somebody where you're not then also taking into account any kind of emotional factors that may impair or may have caused something to be present that may not exist. And we've all been in states of paranoia. Our job within Umbra is to demystify and pull out paranoia from reality and start to actually put these building blocks back together for people for whom, you know, we've all been there in one way or another. In you know, I call them trigger events because they are, you know, the divorces, the deaths of family members, the big, you know, you and I have chatted long about this is where our conversations have come to, about those are the times when people will realize that they need help. What help that comes in remains to be seen. So our duty of care, working within a security moment for someone, a trigger moment for someone, I believe is as good as then some sort of triage around the emotional state of that individual. Again, we'll come on to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but safety, security, the psychological basics, they sit right at the start of that pyramid. So how can we expect as humans, or for our clients, to realize the self-actualization if we're not able to help them on that journey when they're feeling a moment of insecurity?
Okay, so I mean, for me and for our family, the number one is safety in terms of location to live, right? And that can be debated in different forms. What does that even mean? So now, let's say you're doing this audit, you're looking at all the pieces, and of course now they're in fight or flight mode, right? So it's a bit of a not the best state of being to be in to have this conversation. But then there's things that, you know, so how do you nudge them into a direction that's based on what they need rather than what they want? Are you finding that a challenging experience, or are people very open to go into that space?
Well, I think clients are not expecting us to mention emotional support right at the outset.
Okay.
So again, where you and I have talked about the work that we both do, the fundamental of that, the duty of care that we would have to, and we are now doing as part of our onboarding process, is looking at emotional support considerations for the whole family. You know, this is something that, particularly in the wake of a pandemic, you cannot underestimate the power of the impact of something like this year on the feeling of psychological safety. So much so that the security awareness training that we are bringing out will have a whole module dedicated to psychological safety and mental wealth. Because if we're not enabling our clients and their families to understand that, we will not be able to give them a good service, in my opinion. And I think it's something that within the security industry, as a bigger piece, we're trying to fly the flag for a lot more of an empathetic approach, particularly to the training of the individuals that are involved. So from an operative point of view, understanding empathetically the issues that may be faced in relation to a risk profile, the individuals that you would be hiring in to say, you know, come and protect you. I believe there is much more that we can do to embed within that training, as well as the hard skills, which are hugely important, an understanding of self. When you are protecting others, if you don't understand your own approach to psychological safety, I don't believe you can sometimes have issues of then recognizing in others where there may be issues and concerns. So I think
you're taking the game to the next level. From the last time we spoke, I think things have, and that was
escalated.
A few weeks ago. That was a few weeks ago. It wasn't months ago.
It's like dog years.
It's like cheerleading on our side. That's what it sounds like, but I know it's not. But that's amazing.
It's like dog years in a pandemic for me. Give me 2 years in a pandemic, and I will give you a whole brave new world and approach. I'm involved in a lot of the regulatory framework of the industry, but I also day to day deal with families from all over the world, and I think it's a sea change moment. Anyone living through this year, but also running a business of any size, shape, or form, will have had to learn agility, will have had to learn different ways of working. And I think if we can't embrace the glass half full, positive, change-based momentum that we can pick up from this time, then we're missing a trick. Yes, it's exhausting. And yeah, we had to, as leaders of businesses, and for my clients, we have to make sure we fill up the cup and, you know, pull out all those cognitive behavioral therapy techniques of not letting the buckets get too full. But if we can't make big change now to our own lives, to our personal lives, but also to the professional context that we work in. And for me, this has become way bigger than Umbra within the security industry. This is legacy. This is like, what do we want to leave behind as a business? And then persuading my team to do the actual doing part. But the
have you begun by leading by example?
100. I mean, this is the thing I was saying the other day. Okay. I'm now halfway through a journey of ticking off a lot of the therapies that we will also two-way, but get introductions from clients and families. I am experimenting with every single type of emotional support and therapy and learning and understanding. I mean, I'm a secret biohacker, so I'm the worst person to talk to about this. I am obsessed with any way of, from if you get a cold shower to a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, I am in. So I am literally the worst person to ask about it, but 100%. And I think the only reason I got through this year, and I'm very vocal about the fact that all of my team have now done the mental health first aid training. I underwent more cognitive behavioral therapy last summer as a preventative measure, to really understand what it was all about. And I have to say that the bucket analogy is so helpful for times like this, to actually be cognizant of when the bucket's getting full and knowing the tap, and all of that sort of really basic stuff for an Irish Bavarian. So important, because I'm like a tank, you put me in one direction and I sort of keep going. And actually this idea that I would be recommending or talking to clients about emotional support and not have experienced it, it's just
so you're eating your own, you're getting trained, you're eating your own dog food, and then you're seeing how this could be relevant and go step by step. I mean, that's, so I'm going to be doing a cognoscopy very soon. And no, literally it's from somebody who actually found the cure to Alzheimer's, and they have a cognoscopy to help people so that to avoid dementia, because 15% of Americans will have dementia. It's a big number. So I'll tell you how that goes. And then so they have two parts, 45 and up, so it's not for you yet, and then 65 and up, right? So
nearly.
It'll be a few years before you show up, but I'll tell you how that goes. But that's something that I'm just sharing as we go. But so let's take a step back. Okay, so you're working on the team, to really know themselves, understand emotional safety, personal safety. Now let's go back to the pieces. I think it's important so that whoever's listening now and listens later understand what are the pieces of safety that you bring to the table for people to consider, right? If that works for you, can we do that?
Yeah, sure. So really, the business, so Umbra, the business that I run, and the pieces that we bring to clients could be surmised in three parts, and they're the three things that I saw in the 15 years when I worked in family office. That where from 2000 to 2015, remember the word cyber, I don't know, I wasn't using it in 2000, maybe you were, but it was certainly not I don't think I was even using
you were busy in the oxygen chamber trying to
Exactly right. But what I noticed, and in working in a chief of staff role, I know there's a couple of people on here today for whom that is a function, that's their profession, was always knowing who to trust, who you could bring into your family environment to solve problems. And that starts within the internal team. How well do we know our team? Not in a sort of corporate leadership style context, but in sometimes very small environments, family homes, private offices, family offices, all sort of different, particularly between 2000 2015, all the terminology was invented pretty much during that time. For me, it starts with a really solid approach to the human beings that you have in your inner sanctum. And so if we sort of pull that out in a sort of security language, the sort of the due diligence, the background checking, the skill sets, the mindsets, and certainly with some of the more sensitive family environments that I worked in, I just noticed there was so much more that could be done when you are hiring in across all the functions, including security itself. So for me, a third of the business of Umbra is focused on finding the best matches, and I say that in a sort of from a chemistry point of view, so that our clients can live their best secure lifestyle. And we've all been there in teams where there's been an individual or a pocket or a function that doesn't necessarily gel with another. And so my experience of working on the chief of staff side, but also managing the security function, was really the genesis of where all of this came from, because suddenly I was being told that we had certain security parameters, whereas I was not understanding how I was translating that to my clients in terms of the life they wanted to lead. So the middle part of what we do is always going to be advisory. So sitting, talking, helping, planning, whether that's the right people, or then in the other third of the business, the doing part. So we've called it a security concierge. It really is more of a project management function. So you come to the UK and you want to know where to live in the safest way, how to acquire a home that's going to be fit for purpose and similar to the environment that you've come into and from. Hiring the right people to manage the process of moving and also of being and living and existing. So really the business and the clients that we work with now is 100% entrenched in the struggles I had when I was working client side and the challenges that you will always have in working in an evolutionary, high tempo, sometimes highly exposed in terms of my sort of more high profile clients, but certainly where there's wealth, there is also scrutiny, and where there is a desire to do good, how that's managed. So for me, it comes back to the three things: the people, the advice that you get, and the supply chain that you use. So not to speak too crudely, but bringing together different parts of a function to organize a house move, for me, is as much a security project as planning a protective infrastructure. Because if you have one weak link in helping a client relocate from to wherever, that then causes a whole knock-on effect. So all three parts of the business effectively are the parts that I noticed could be done better and are still evolving. So for example, the work we do in protecting our clients' digital life, it's the penny drop for me has only happened this year, where the conversations that we're having with clients once we've done the initial duty of care, emotional support, is why are we looking at physical risk and not looking at digital risk? Or why are we looking at digital risk and not looking at physical risk? You wouldn't go down the street and throw a brick and expect to sort of walk away and no one sort of bat an eyelid. And that's the equivalent of where there is opinion online. You have to then expect there will be some sort of link between the two. There will be some retaliation, whether it's physical retaliation or online retaliation, and the two now inextricably linked. That's been, I think, the most exciting part of growing a business in a space where we've got secure tech creating all sorts of confusion, because you still have to have exceptional humans to understand the tech, right? So it all goes back to, certainly through times of COVID, all I can talk about the trends and the things that we've noticed in the last year, but it all goes back to certainly during times of high stress, high change, high volatility. Who are your crew? Who are your humans? None of us have probably turned around this year and thought, gosh, I wish I had some time with some AI. I really miss having digital interaction. We all are all craving physical interaction because it's a normal part of the human species to evolve. So humans have had to get better. So certainly we're always on the search for exceptional humans to work with our exceptional clients, because as we evolve and as technology evolves, we're just going to have to become better. And also, Feisal, I am semi-Luddite when it comes to sort of technological evolution. I get there, but at 42, I sit firmly in that sort of real interaction is always better. And then there's the inner 22-year-old inside of me that's like, hey, we could digitize this. But certainly from a security point of view, I'm loving seeing a lot of the secure tech that's evolving and emerging. It's certainly in our ethos of living a secure lifestyle. It certainly fits with that, because our clients are getting younger and more experimental and saying, I want to live in 4 different jurisdictions. I want everything in the palm of my hand. And so there's these considerations to take into account when human beings will always want that human at the end of it. So for us, relationships will always deconflict any sort of risk profile, because you then have a human being to bounce off or counter or sense check with. So yes, we as you can tell, we take security to a whole sort of holistic level, and as a result, we've just meet some really interesting people with really interesting ideas. And that's the great thing about one of the only good things about a pandemic, is that there's no bad ideas. There's only bad attitudes towards what those outcomes could be. So as a leader in my business and in my sector, it's listening to all of those different voices and bringing them into the trawler net on deck, and then working through what is going to work for us in what order and what components are going to be needed to give our clients this edge in their secure lifestyle. Because that's what we all want, right? Is how can we be better than the situation we find ourselves in? And a lot of security is simply that bit of knowledge or that bit of education or that unlocking of something that you can do yourself. There's no cost to that. It's all in here, that feeling, that sense of peace of mind. But just nudging our clients on that journey has been, I think there's been an equality of that security feeling across the globe. And I think some of our families and clients have really benefited from picking up on that and taking ownership, and rather than outsource mentality, actually, what do I want from my human capital? What is trust to me? Who do I trust? Who are the people that I allow into my inner circle? And a lot of those conversations that we're involved with is the recalibration of that, the geographical shifts of who and where those people physically are. We used to be able to fly in, didn't we, and see our trusted people. Now it's, where are they? Where am I? Where am I going to live? Where's safe? Where's going to be safe? Where am I going to send my children to school? Where are they going to then live? So it's fascinating times from an anthropological, did I get that right, perspective? Yeah.
So okay, so you're still seeing reactivity, which, when we started, I've been doing this for 15 years, but as a company, eight years. And when we started, there was a lot of reactivity. Now, I would say in the last, 3-4 years, there's a lot of proactivity, right? That's why our tagline is proactive health and well-being. So do you feel that you're far away from that people are going to start doing things proactively, or do you feel we still have to learn the hard way and just show up when divorce and tax issues or sale of a company, or I don't know, whatever the motives are? I mean, those are the events that you're seeing, right? Are creating these movements, right?
Yes, I think as I said about the penny drop for this year, I think being that physical digital risk, I'll take that any day of the week. But we still have so much more to do in explaining the benefits, both in terms of time, resources, energy, where we can sit down and proactively have a process-led conversation around what is a secure lifestyle. So I think possibly, yes, I would take the physical digital risk understanding over a proactive mindset. However, I think in the work that we do a lot of with our sort of legal fiduciary trust partnerships, I think there has been a bit of time to sit and reflect this year, going over administrative points, which a lot of the projects that we work on in reactive state could have simply been prevented by a good approach to, prenup, postnup, wills, all the kind of paperworky stuff that people have had a bit of time to perhaps reflect upon this year in pockets of time. It's still a slightly comedy conversation to be having in presenting, this is the cost of things going wrong. This is the cost of a proactive quarterly, monthly, daily, whatever approach. These are the things you can do yourself with, because again, it's going to cost lots of, there's always a sort of a concern about this being a costly exercise. And actually, as I said before, good security comes from you. A lot of things that can be done to feel safe and secure are educative and emotional support based. So I think for me, there's been a sort of penny drop. We're still going to have to bang the drum whilst also resetting the parameters and expectations of what it is to work as someone who protects or work in the security industry. I think there's a whole lot more of a kind of hand-holding, bespoke, very advisory-led security, private security industry, which I'm now proud to be part of. A lot of the sort of emerging newer businesses that are coming through, and existing businesses that are really seeing the importance of this. But much like for you, and much like my own biohacking journey, I was always that person in my 20s and 30s, Irish Bavarian tank, keep going. And actually, even my own approach to my physical health is reflective of where we're at in the conversations we have with our clients, because I will now offer to meet my clients at various different sort of, whether it's gyms or spa locations or places that, you know, from a medical or medi health perspective, I can then also, you know, have a quick hyperbaric oxygen chamber session. I've had sessions in larger chambers that we have now in here in London. I've had sessions prior to COVID with clients where I'm either, you know, pre or post their workouts or pre or post their cryotherapy sessions. So it's the inner Californian in me, which just loves that sort of progression in the business. But I think until it's a mapping exercise, and until where we would talk to and are in conversations with our big trust partners, for example, when you are structuring, when you are looking at wealth preservation, when you're looking at transferring that to another generation, if you don't consider how and where a secure lifestyle fits with that, underneath which emotional support sits within that, we are the rod of the back of that whole journey. And so I think it starts possibly prior to our clients, prior to their next generation becoming more. It starts with the intermediary community. You know, we're an advisor to the advisors. We are. A lot of our referrals will come now through client to client, but you know, we're still a business that works alongside the functions that have spotted that a prenup or postnup would be useful, that have gone over the succession planning and looked at processes that could be in a reactive state quite difficult to handle, and cause a lot of disruption and dispute, and we don't want to get into that mindset. So I think in conclusion, a lot more work to be done, could do better, as was on my report card at school. But yeah, I think if we keep trying to remember, again, cognitive behavioral therapy, bringing ourselves back into cognizant present, you know, understanding there is a tomorrow to plan for, reflecting but not going back to the past in a negative way, certainly when it comes to risk profiling and planning, and really looking at this. That's why we call it a secure lifestyle. We want to take out any of the mythology, the sort of let's rake over the past. The past is the past. It's happened. Let's learn from it, but let's also move our clients in that direction. And I think that younger and younger clients, as well as some of our older clients who are perhaps handing over the reins, are really understanding that you know, really good processes and protocols will save time, and that efficiency factor, I think, is going to win the day. So, you know, we're part of the way there. I think everyone just needs to, you know, get into this year 2 of what we've been dealing with, because there's always going to be more of a COVID priority. And as I said right at the start, it's about keeping this at the top of the agenda. So my work is banging the drum with our intermediary community, encouraging our legal fiduciary trust partners to embed us in the journey, and then working with people such as yourself, that it's not weird that I would be meeting a client in a medical facility. It's just, you know, it's efficient, it's time saving, and it's actually this is how we're going to be living now, with this health and safety mindset of trends that we've noticed, this hyper personalized approach to life, which will reflect in the secure lifestyle choices.
I mean, look, we're working with the same, you know, similar people like you, and what we've created, the Family Wellbeing Trust, so that you create a framework within that, so that it's funded for generations to come for the well-being of the family, right? And you have a clear defined role of the trustee, because a lot of trustees are like, wait a minute, what's my role? I don't want to be taking a risk of the outcome of this process, right? So it might be something, I don't know if, you know, if it's a big enough piece or not enough, I don't know, I don't care whether it's big or small, but something that you might want to look at in terms of the trustees for, you know, funding, like they do medical insurance, like they do education, like now they're starting to do well-being, right? That might be part of that well-being piece, where you have that peace of mind, you know, from a security perspective. Maybe reframe the word security, I don't know, but that might be something to consider, right?
Yeah,
because
definitely. Yeah, and you know, we work as you know, very closely with Swiss independent trustees, and Andy Bales, who's one of the best trustees that I've certainly come across. He is looking at this way of embedding. He is also leading from the front in his sector to when you're structuring, it's just a no-brainer to put these different parts of the puzzle together. Let's not call it multi-family office services. God, even saying it just, it's just too much wordage. It's just, I obviously I'm biased. I'd call it secure lifestyle, but invented it.
It's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
No, but it's whatever it is. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And the amount of conversations that I'll have, not only with our clients or potential clients or advisors, and as the advisor to the advisor, I think that the time spent spreading that message, almost evangelically, has then over the years enabled us to have conversations in a proactive way before they've happened. But I think you're absolutely right. It's going to be a sort of very and I'm predicting a very fast shift in what was, we always did it that way has always been my least favorite phrase. I think that we're going to be starting to see more embracing of we can do it this way, and a more entrepreneurial mindset, even within the least entrepreneurial of human beings. Everyone's got this intrapreneur inside of them, and we're seeing it with a lot of creativity that's been expressed through need, through where people's careers and personal and professional lives have kind of teared off at tangents this year. And I think, as I said, we're in this perfect moment to embrace all of this change and learning and understanding that the wealth of health is possibly the most important part of that puzzle from an emotional, psychological safety, physical health perspective. If we can get that right, it shouldn't then sit separately or underneath major structuring, major change, major shift and trigger events. It should be, that's the first thing that's brought to somebody's attention in particularly those sort of high octane moments. That's where I think we could start to see the results of people being bold enough and brave enough, and I mean that on the advisory side, to actually start having those conversations. I think we need to temper certain conversations. I mean, I know there are clients of mine who they will ring me and ask me specifically for my weird, you drank a matcha coffee last time. What's give me, where can I get that in London? But that for me is, again, from a legacy point of view, that is not a problem for me. That's a good, I'll take that as a tombstone. She knew her way around a matcha latte location, because for me that's really important legacy stuff for the business, and it's also where I think a lot of a proactive mindset to if you were there at the moment where you helped protect the lifestyle or health of a client and their family, there's another conversation that you can have, and it's another level of trust, it's another level of relationship that is just so special. And it's something that we've really prided ourselves on, is this knowing the little intimate details of somebody's family and structure and key life moments, where you can then celebrate things rather than being the naysayer, which is what a lot of what security has been, coming in with the bad news or at the bad times. Actually, you can be representative of a positive life event, of the new marriage, or of the new sort of business that was started by one generation of the family off the back of a conversation around this proactivity. So I'm always going to be glass half full about the future, but I do think we have to keep banging this drum as the people that we are in our sectors, and use our leverage across other industries to keep spreading this message.
So I'm going to go now into a piece that's always been a challenge between generations, which is the communication, right? So now obviously you've got a lot of young, very wealthy people, but then you still have two generations dealing with that security element, and that, especially on the cyber side. Where do you see the conflict, or where do you see the heads butting in that space? There's the physical side and the cyber side, and the selection of people, right?
So I think much like we're seeing the shift from advisor to advisor, what is it, 80% of individuals in the next generation will change, will simply say, no, that was the past, I want a new fresh approach. I think the challenge we've got with the physical the digital cyber landscape is, like I said at the start, one man's locked out of a Gmail password lockout because he hasn't set up two-factor authentication is another person's cyber breach. So I think we've got an experimental side of one half of the puzzle, where there's lots of great emerging businesses where, you know, one or two individuals setting up a company coming from really interesting parts of, you know, ex-military or agency, and coming with really good ideas. And then you've got this physical side of the industry, which will and always has been more ingrained in a traditional mindset, a traditional way of doing things, that has learned to adapt and add in, you know, the cyber and digital services as a part of a kind of full service offering. So I think, and as to say, clients are getting much more savvy, much more aware. The conversations I'm having are way more high level as to, you know, individuals in their circle that they may have been to, you know, through education with, or in some form of working environment with, who have bits and parts of the knowledge. And because it's so evolving, that can often also be as complex as no knowledge, because you have parts of the puzzle in an industry that's emerging where there's a sort of misunderstanding. So, for example, a recent client case where there was a sort of compromised communication potential. Instead of her spending a lot of time going over whether it had been and where that had come from, we flipped her over to, let's create a hermetically sealed chamber for your communications going forward. Okay. And she really appreciated that approach, because, you know, not only did we save time, we saved resources, we saved energy, we saved stress. And she's now set up in a, you know, she hadn't had a sort of, you know, domain management. And as I say, secure IT processes. Our IT guys have been working flat out for 12 months when people realized that they were going to live entirely online, and the benefits of doing that. So we could have had a whole project looking backwards for her, and, you know, raking over things and saying, you know, he said, she said, working with lawyers, expense. So I think there's got to be a much more of a relationship with any of our families and clients to understand not only where problems could present, but also what good looks like. Because for some people, actually, peace of mind is knowing where and how things have gone wrong. But in the main, it's lessons learned, like I said, living in a present moment mindset, and then also looking forward, because forward's happening quicker and quicker now. You know, every day that passes is another iteration of a new post-COVID world. So we've got to kind of keep our eye on those emerging threats and opportunities as much as learning from the past. So I think there's a massive moment for feeling safe. We've got big things happening around the world, big opinions, big shifts amongst society as to public safety, you know, big things happening where that feeling of safety is being pulled from us in a sort of community sense. So I think we've all got this sort of duty of care to be good online citizens, but also good physical. Like, let's not forget that we're human beings. And so how does that translate in how where we're seeing you know, where our advisory sits within that, is that we've now got more and more amazing people to work with and choose, who are specialists in field. And so what I would say is that the more niche we become in the different facets of our secure lifestyle audit, so it's not just headline, child, home, you know, it's becoming subsection, actually, protection, the health, what do we mean by health? You know, what do we mean by psychological safety? All the subsections. So again, what I'm going to always go back to, exceptional human beings, and we are at the front line of finding those individuals, not least of which on an operative level, we've got some amazing female close protection operatives now working globally on the basis that they didn't have a network before. They didn't have a means with which to hub. So we've sort of created that. There's a tech platform behind that, but it's totally human led. It's totally human interaction led. You know, and we're helping those individuals to network within their own community, so that they can then go and work in teams and provide a bit more of a different look and a feel to a family's protective infrastructure, for example. So I think we're in a very important moment where physical and digital are going to have some really icky, sticky conversations to each other, where there's going to become a lot more siloed working. Therefore, a company like ours to help bring that to sort of parentheses, that advisory piece together, to make sure left hands and right hands talk, because that's, as we know, where things can go wrong, both from a medical perspective. That little piece of information could work really well on this part of the puzzle. So I think it's a really interesting time for clients to get really good value, and families to get really good value out of what they talk to their existing infrastructure about where they are in 20 years time. I don't think there's many businesses that sit at the table of tax, fiduciary, trust, partnerships like we do to actually embed themselves into the protective infrastructure of the future. That's just, for me, a no-brainer. If your head of security isn't coming in on high-level C-suite type-esque conversations, then we're all missing a trick there. And so for us to create that common understanding and deconflict some of the, it's still a very jargonistic, like, I'm medical, I can talk to you, and sort of, you understand this. Part of the trick of explaining where someone's physical or mental health may need a sort of a reframe is to help that individual understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's my body, yet I don't understand what you're saying about my body. Exactly the same for security and secure lifestyle. I kind of get that things could go wrong, but I don't really understand the process. And I don't necessarily want to be a mitochondrial ATP cell renewal expert, but I kind of want to know that the basics of what you're saying are how I can then add a bit of learning and understanding to that. And so much like we have the clients with hacker friends or cyber friends, you guys probably have those individuals that have Google, Dr. Google, and so it's bringing all of that trawler net together, having exceptional humans, really good advice, and funneling and channeling that in the right way. So I think it's a changing time for how we've done everything, not least of which, let's keep ourselves safe in a cerebral way.
So I want to go back now, just two sides. So what have you seen the most in terms of issues in the last 12 months? And what are your concerns going forward? But then also the flip side, the opportunities that are coming. So what have you seen a lot of that you're like, wow, we humans are just not learning? Why do we need to rinse and repeat? Or have you not had too much rinse and repeat?
No, I think there's been huge learnings. I think if we look at the key things that we've been asked to help with this year from a sort of Umbra point of view, this understanding that health and safety are now intrinsically linked. You cannot look at security, risk and threat without looking at health. I know it sounds like an obvious one, but even for me, it's really, really hit home, being asked where to access the best medical resources, isolating with ventilators, resetting a whole team infrastructure because of the unknown of how long a certain family wanted to lock down for in a certain location. Who's prepared to work for an unknown period and length of time without seeing friends and family during a pandemic? That was a sort of a real sort of initial kind of learning. Trends and like I mentioned about this sort of hyper personalization, I think a lot of our clients have continued to travel where they can throughout this whole year.
Okay.
But it's been this hyper personalization, this hand holding, this chaperoning, the amount of chaperones, particularly our female operatives, chaperoning our clients, young people, particularly where there's unaccompanied minors or going from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, particularly divorces and individuals choosing to live in completely different locations to before, instead of being down the road from each other in a major city in Europe or US or whatever, now living in different places. But I think this is the positives of this year. I think I'll always, with my surname in mind, it's always glass half full. I think the learnings from this year of what is important, prioritization, as long as there is an awareness of where you sit on the emotional support, or your approach to your own psychological safety. I think there's been an awakening for quite a few of our families, and by extension those that work around them, because let's not underestimate the impact of having worked alongside our clients and families this year. We've also had our own stuff to deal with and our own lives and our own considerations for older, younger members of the family. I think we've had a more authentic, certainly as a business, we've had such real conversations. You're in my home, I'm in my client's home on a regular basis in a way that I simply wasn't before. And I think security just got a whole lot more personal, a whole lot more bespoke, unique. Everything that we've talked about that you guys are doing. It's this mirror that's been put up in front of all of us to say what is important and what's going to be left behind. But I think from a practical point of view as well, a lot of great successes in being able to do a lot more things virtually, saving us time, saving clients time, being very economical in that respect. I keep talking about value, and I think it's a really important one, because I think I've never been transactional in the way that we've worked. We work on a pro bono basis until we are the right fit for our families, and vice versa. So I think it's been a time where we've had that time to have really good conversations. And for us, no conversation is a wasted conversation, because we'll always take a nugget of learning to another scenario. Authenticity and simplification. So it really, none of us have had bandwidth for things that have multifaceted strands to them. Organizational building blocks that make sense, silos of information. And I would say also on our people side, I was fully expecting for recruitment of private staffing and security staffing to take a hit. That's been the biggest part of the business this year, because I think that importance on trusted, that importance on and from our operatives and our individuals home environments. You're in my home, I want to make sure you're the right fit for me, but also I want to make sure that where I'm working next fits with me. So this chemistry factor of the human beings and the human capital that's deployed within a sort of family environment is the right match. So yeah, lots of learning, and I'm seeing a message coming in there.
It's a strong one. So bioterrorism and extremism, domestic as much as international, are of increasing concern for personal safety and the continuity of businesses. Are you also seeing these issues raised by your clients?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Stephanie. Heavy. What I would say is, I think there's been, and I'm interested to see a lot of app-based alert systems coming into the market. So, in the palm of your hand. I think, yes, of course, bioterrorism, extremism of any form, opinions that are expressed in a physical context, and also that are perhaps incited and started in a digital context. But I am delighted to see that there are technologies and certainly businesses that are responding to this by saying, how does that impact on an individual level? Well, you want to know things that are happening in the area that you're in, but you also want to be forward planning places and countries and areas that you are going to be visiting. And particularly as we unlock, Stephanie, I'd say that this is something that feeds right back to the start of what I was saying about paranoia, peace of mind, and reality. So these are, so bioterrorism, extremism, these are two constructs that have existed for times prior to COVID. I think the increasing concern isn't just within concern that things will happen outside of someone's control on either of those fronts, but I think it's the unexpected nature, the speed at which things can change, both within a physical environment, but also in a mood or a mindset. The Sarah Everard murder here in London recently, you could feel the attitude towards gender-based violence. It was just, and still is, on the placards of next to all the flowers that have been laid for this girl who has become a sort of metaphor for that feeling of safety and security as you walk at night. So in answer to your question, Stephanie, no more so than previously, and particularly where travel has been semi-limited. Now that things are opening up, there are all sorts of different considerations into a risk profile, and we are being educated by our clients as to what they are concerned about, as much as presenting new risks and threats. Because I think the one thing about security is you never want to be the poacher gamekeeper. Here's the risk, here's the solution. Because for some of these things, they're bigger than a solution. They are movements, they are geopolitical considerations, they are based on your value systems, they are way more complex than simply those two words. They are also led by opinion and misinformation or information. And so again, it all boils back to, for me, when I am seeing an increase in concern for personal safety, particularly for younger parts of the family, particularly those that are itching to become globally nomadic again, I think there is going to be a real lens and a real focus on the technology that could be in the palm of your hand to at least give more information and at least make you aware of situations in different places that you may be going to. But again, I would go back to the conversations that I had with clients about being good online citizens. I think we're all united now by a feeling of insecurity around those two particular words there. Where is it concern and where is it we need a solution? A lot of this simply doesn't have a clear-cut solution other than the processes, the protocol, the proactive mindset. So I think bringing it back to what is the process of the secure lifestyle audit that we would take into consideration, any link to or any concern about those two factors would be a conversation, part of a relationship that we would build with that client or their family, where that impacts on the day-to-day lifestyle, and what things and what great humans can we put in place to be able to keep flagging and also to keep watching in environments and issues as they unfold. This experimental side, particularly digital and cybersecurity, is probably my biggest concern for myself, my family, not least of which my clients and their family. So that's the part that we're trying to bring together with physical risk and threat, so that we can then be cognizant of the things that are going to take center stage and that are going to cause concern, in as much as I say, a value system, and then your state of mind at any given moment is going to respond to that. Hope that sort of explains.
Yeah,
that answers
so
that for you, Stephanie.
I mean, seeing that obviously, there are businesses like you're explaining that are really, booming and like you said, are adaptable, are agile, are really taking advantage or making the most of this change that's happening on a global scale. But overall, there is an economic impact in many other areas. So now, as the economics get challenging, as the unemployment numbers get worse and all of those things happen, there's a physical element of safety that are going to become a concern in some of the major cities around the world, including obviously London, right? Now, are clients already thinking about that, and are you already proactively starting to address that, or do you think that's still at the back burner?
I think absolutely, as we're unlocking and as we're seeing tensions rising and as we're seeing economic cycles starting to deepen, one of the first concerns that one of my clients had last year was for his property in prime central London. He wasn't there, family wasn't there. What was was it going to be okay? Another client for whom they have stayed the entire time in prime central London, and I've been, in phases concerned, particularly where there were demonstrations and protests, and the commonality between the family that are here and the family that are not here is good, timely information, and then best advice as to what to do with that information. So would we advise that there's a walk around Hyde Park on a sunny day if we have information to say that there may be a gathering of individuals wanting to express an opinion? Now, it's not for us to say that some of our clients may have particularly younger members of the family that want to go and express that opinion, and we have had a case where a very deep and very quick conversation, swift conversation had to be had around a younger member of the family that wanted to go and be part of it. And actually, what are the considerations around somebody going and joining in and expressing their value system? I go back to some of the great technology that's coming out, previewing risks. There's a couple of companies that we're in talks with at the moment where I'm often of the mindset that if you can see an issue happening in a nearby location, you shouldn't be there. And actually, there's a sort of reactive, again, process of extraction that can be just costly in terms of energy and time and resources. But yeah, I think where we're going to start to see tensions, going back to the geopolitical, the economic cycles that we are in and we are going into deeper, this sense of the home being the castle, this sense of, we've already seen it with protection of the home infrastructure, physical protection, I think is going to be the drawing up the drawbridges in the kind of literal and figurative sense, and that practical application of common sense, which when you've lived in a sort of gilded cage of protection and protectionism, actually, are you attuned to things going in a slightly different direction. And actually, if you had even got yourself on a tracker, on a map, would that even help in that scenario? Or do you simply have to be much more streetwise and aware, not getting yourself into situations in the first place? It goes against my sort of human instinct to live a secure lifestyle, but then for some of our clients, that's just simply not possible. So yeah, I think some choppy waters ahead in all particularly major cities. And we have clients all from left to right, US to Singapore, having these sort of conversations. It's hyper localized, hyper personalized as to what one man's Hyde Park demonstration is another person's opportunity to express an opinion. So it does become slightly more of a paranoia to palpable reality conversation. Again, security becomes relationships and proactive relationships that we can build before things start to unravel, and the choices that people make about the locations that they choose to be in. And certainly we're seeing, from a bigger picture public safety point of view, the resources that are going to be there, strained, policing, all of the sort of usual suspects that you would ring in case of an emergency or in case of a problem. Individuals that wouldn't have otherwise thought about protection will have to start thinking about grouping together. We've seen streets in London, pulling together to form a sort of man and the dog, a protective function, all the way through to our communities coming together to make sure everyone's on a WhatsApp group to make sure that information is spread in real time. So both of those examples are just as legitimately safe as the other.
Okay. All right. We've got 3 more minutes to go. Is there an area, a topic, anybody have any questions that we can go in, but any area that you feel you'd like to share, Kate, that you haven't touched upon? I know we went left, right, up and down, but I'm sure there's something that's still waiting to be expressed.
No, I just think it's, I got to go back right to the start of what I said. Security is a mindset, and let's all have some time and space to invest into our mindset, and our feelings of psychological safety are well within our grasp. So let's reduce our feeling and our risk profile through our feeling of safety and security by starting with ourselves.
Is there something that we can share with those who are going to watch and who haven't, that we can share with them as a checklist or anything of the sorts? I don't know. Is there something that to reflect a little deeper, or not really? It's better just to connect with you and go through the process. Yeah, just
if anyone wants to have a conversation. I've made the rod for my back about being accessible. I love having conversations about what security means to the individual. There are some broad categories, and I'll happily share that, the Secure Lifestyle Audit Checklist, which I think you've seen. I can distill that down. So if anyone wants to come to me for any further information, I'll happily share it.
Yeah, no, it's just because it's, some areas that we just don't think about, right? Like, and we're seeing, like Hong Kong, right? Hong Kong now, everybody's reevaluating, right? What does it mean to live here? What are the risks? I've been having conversations about data, which I never had, right? Having conversations about, data moving across the border, right? What does that mean? Things that I never thought about because of what's happened. And I'm sure there's families rethinking their jurisdiction, right? Because of safety, because of the economics, right? Because that is definitely going to play, when 2008 happened, the key question that we talked about with the CEOs of banks was, are the locations we are in and our families in safe? And they were talking first physical safety because of the economics that were coming, right? So it's the same, it could be the same. I know that markets have done crazy and people have made obscene amount of money, but with that also came the other end, right? That's why I asked the question. And, if people are relocating, do you see people relocating because of that, or just being more safe?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and so even closer to home, Channel Islands here in the UK, but the exposure through sudden wealth as well, that can be a very, very vulnerable time, particularly from a psychological, but also physical, digital safety point of view. But yeah, the actual physical location, I think, rethinking where and what, particularly if you're about to embark on having a family, what's that going to look like, what's safe, and some of the migratory patterns that we've seen even in the last few months, particularly prior to sort of tax years and things like that, happening very quickly from decision to physical kind of boxes in a new property. So again, the feeling of safety, jurisdictional safety, crime trends, sat with a 19-year-old client's son talking about, knife crime in the UK, and wow. Compared to where this client came from in the world, I think, and the area that he was looking to move into the UK, I was like, you're going to be fine. But
you could say that about me, but I'm still not interested in being there. I've run companies in countries you don't. I'm sure at the peak of the businesses we ran in Angola, we had more armed security guards than you do at this moment in time. We had but that doesn't mean that I want to live there or have a family there or raise children.
Exactly.
Right? It's a different time, right? For a different
totally place. And it's Badlands of Baghdad to the Badlands of Belgravia. There's still to there's conversations to be had about where that home safety and home security resides, and it starts from within.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. We've just finished our time. Thank you for your time, for sharing, in such breadth, width, depth. I mean, you went in all directions, and we'll share the video, with those who weren't able to make it, and obviously also with, it'll be on the website, so it'll be, and then when you have the short checklist, it would be great to share with everyone so that they can start reflecting and have that, inner conversation with self, like you said, about what does safety mean to me and what is it comprised of and what areas have I not thought about that Kate is now, asking me to consider, right? I think that would be very, very helpful. All right. So thank you very much. Thank you, Kate. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Have bon appetit. So next week we're going to be with Spring, who's going to talk about the body as medicine. So it's going to be a very interesting conversation. And coming back then after that, we're going to have Christine talking about the nonverbal communication in love and relationships. And then the week after, we're going to be talking with Diane Chambers about the relationship with money. So we've got a whole, we've got women, very, very powerful women, one after the other. So thank you, Kate, for being number 3 on that list. And we're just continuing, deciding who's on April 28th. Looks like it's going to be a man to break the trend of 7 women in a row. But it's clear that, yes, correctly. All right. Thank you very much, Kate. Thanks a lot. And we'll be keeping in touch as always to see how we can continue to help the families we both serve. Okay.
Brilliant.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.